Morning, Jean.
Morning, Susie.
How's you?
Yes, it could be better.
Oh, morning,
No.
Christine. Oh, no, Rona. Morning, Joe.
Morning.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Christine.
Hi. Hello, Rona.
Hi.
Yeah, Joe.
Hi, Karen and Mike. I missed it. How is everyone?
Good. How are you, Susie?
Yes, good, thank you. Yes, full moon today.
Yeah. Oh, crazy. Oh, hello, Steve.
Yes. Yeah. Morning, Steve.
Morning. Morning.
Morning.
Make way for another one. There we go. Hi, Karen.
Oh, here we go.
I can't see myself. Can you see me?
Yes,
We can see you. Yeah.
I'm not there. Yes, I am. I'm
No,
there.
you're here.
I found me.
You're on.
I thought I'd gone invisible.
Morning.
Morning, Kim.
Morning,
Morning,
everybody.
Jess.
Morning, Jean. Oh,
Been good to see you.
no. Come on, pretty. Come on. You're going to see everybody.
Morning. Morning, Chris.
Hi, Christine.
I'm really sorry, the lovely Yoga Mango. I can't remember your name.
Christine.
Oh, you're Christine too. Oh, well, that's easy.
That's easy. No problems there. Yeah, I'm interested. I've got chaos going on behind me unusually today, so I might be dipping in and out. But anyway, yeah, no, Christine, you'll remember Susie.
I will. Yes, there's 3 of you here.
Good.
I'll just call everybody Christine.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Hi, Susie.
Hi, how are you, Chris?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah. Yes, good, thank you. Yes.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. On a cloudy full moon.
Apologies from Catherine.
Jeff.
She couldn't. Susie, apologies from Catherine. She couldn't make it today.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I've had a couple of apologies. And
Bernard. He's on his way.
Yes, Bernard's
He's on his way somewhere.
between destinations. Morning, Jeff. How are you?
Oh, hello, Jeff.
Good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Sorry for not being on time, but be getting out of Zoom, really.
I was a minute late as well. Right. It's funny, I was looking at research on full moon and the heart. Because it's the full moon today. Is it 3:56 or something?
Yeah, like that, Susie.
Yeah. And the research does show that actually, which is one of the things that sort of old law and philosophy has said for a long time, that the waning moon is better for operations, but they've actually proven that heart operations are more successful in a waning moon phase with research. So quicker recovery time and quicker exit from hospital, less problems, etc. but I didn't want to cloud the issue because I was talking about winter, not full moons. I'm just mentioning that in passing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah.
As it's the full moon today. Morning, Jess. Oh, she's here somewhere, I think. Oh, there she is. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no picture.
No, no, that's fine. Morning, Jess. I was just connecting to audio. And then I'll get started if everyone's ready. Yeah. Morning, Jess. Really, the winter is tough for the whole of the body, not just the heart. Because it's colder, our own body fluids are affected, even though we live in our heated houses and take hot showers every day. Well, and sometimes cold ones as well, perhaps, if we're doing a bit of hydrotherapy. Unfortunately, the cold weather is a lot tougher for the whole of the body. So body fluids are thicker and more sluggish, and the impact of the darkness as well has an effect on the body mind. So less light and less vitamin D is more challenging in all sorts of ways, and particularly in managing our calcium metabolism, which affects our heart as well. So what they've actually found in a long study of about 15 years in Sweden is that they had a higher risk of heart attacks during Christmas, the New Year period, and midsummer holidays, but not at Easter. So they were the 3 time periods that they checked out. So there was a prominent incidence of them in that calendar week 52. And I think if you think about it emotionally, it's been a time when, you know, it's known that there are a lot of people who are quite lonely at that time of year. And emotional stress also has a huge impact on cardiovascular health. And they know that, you know, again, for a fact from research. So also Monday mornings at 8 o'clock in the morning is quite a common time. And it's interesting, I don't know if Mondays are associated with going back to a dreaded place of work and also associated with emotional stress. But what they found with heart attacks on Christmas Eve is that they peaked around 10 o'clock in the evening rather than in the early morning hours. So it's almost that anticipation perhaps of being alone the next day on a day that is associated with gatherings. Anyway, that was in the British Medical Journal in 2018. So from a very natural perspective, all of this seems to make a lot of sense in that another study looked at heart attacks that were occurring between 6 o'clock in the morning and midday were associated with about 20% more dead heart tissue, so more myocardial dysfunction. And if you look at the Chinese 5 elements, they have a 24-hour clock, and they acknowledge that each of your organs has a 2-hour time period when it is functioning at its best, its peak time. And for the pericardium, which is an organ that we don't acknowledge, the Chinese call the pericardium an organ in its own right. And the pericardium is the lining of your heart. And the Chinese call it the heart protector. It's the heart's first line of defense. And it's also called at other times sex and circulation meridian. But as you can see, it's highly connected with circulation, and its peak time is 7 to 9 in the evening, whilst its low time when it's resting is 7 to 9 in the morning. So when I heard about the more heart attacks occurring at 8 a.m. in the morning, more damage done between 6 to noon, I thought that that was probably a factor as well. And also, if you think about Christmas is right next to the winter solstice, and the other time point they looked at was the summer solstice. And at each of those times, light and dark are at their peak. At the winter solstice, we have the longest periods of darkness and the shortest periods of light. And again, as I mentioned, lack of light has a huge impact on the body's vitamin D and therefore calcium metabolism. But also, normally, if you think about peak cold, peak heat, perhaps, they are also at each of the solstices. And a lot of heat, as opposed to a lot of cold, can also have an impact on the body in terms of, really gets the body fluids moving, which creates a lot of cleansing in heat, or real deep stagnation when it's cold. And also thinking about the fact that as we're starting to come back from longest day to shortest night to, I got that the right way around, longest day, shortest night, and longest night, shortest day, there may also be an effect on the polarity of the body with the electromagnetic shift that will take place. And the heart is highly electromagnetically sensitive. So what's happening with the blood vessels? Well, the cold can really make your blood vessels contract and become constricted, and that reduces the blood flow in itself and restricts the blood flow then to the heart, which increases the risk of heart attack because the heart can't function as it normally would, and it would be more prone to contraction itself. And so when it's cold, though, not just the heart vessels contract or constrict, but all blood vessels in the body contract, so that you can preserve the body temperature in the core of your body to all the main organs. So when you are out in the cold, and I've worked obviously with people, experienced people in the family who, if older people who if they go out in the cold weather, are far more likely to suffer with an angina attack when they're out in the cold, because the blood pressure rises when the blood vessels contract, and that puts a further strain on the heart. Now, of course, that's a greater challenge when your heart arteries are narrowing, with a condition like atherosclerosis. What a mouthful. But then, of course, if there's any blood clotting in any of these narrowed arteries, then that's what can starve the heart of oxygen and also contribute to the heart attack or myocardial infarction. So then the Interheart study in Sweden, which again was running for about 15 years that we've mentioned, also looked at psychosocial stress. and found that severe stress, which was ongoing and persistent, would make it far more likely that an individual, 2.5 more times more likely that an individual would have a heart attack compared to someone who was not stressed. And Professor Annika Rosengren also said that if that stress was linked to depression, then the risk would increase threefold. So if we have a look at stress, this is a diagram depicting what happens when your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal are all interconnected, which they are anyway, with your stress. And if there's high and consistent stress, these are all the bodily disruptions that can happen. And I guess looking at stress, it's not always as simple as emotional stress, because things like caffeine causes stress in the body. Pain can cause stress, shift work, jet lag. The fact that we've moved into winter and there's more dark hours can cause some people stress and disrupt their circadian rhythms. So sometimes it can be a sort of environmental stress, and sometimes it can be something that we're doing to ourselves. But if it's external stress, such as emotional stress, work stress, etc., then those types of stresses also trigger, along with circadian disruption, a constant churning out of high cortisol. And the cortisol in itself, because it makes us release sugar from the liver, the muscles, and the fat cells, which we then don't necessarily burn, because we're maybe not running from a dinosaur or fighting a dinosaur. We're not dealing with it in a physical way. We then have to restore that sugar back in the cells, and that takes the production of insulin. And if we've got any issues with insulin resistance, then what cortisol is going to start contributing to is fat building up around the middle of the body. And we become that classic apple shape, and gather fat around the middle, which of course is the worst place to store fat, because it produces hormones of its own, starts to contribute to inflammation in the body, interleukins and so on. And they are what will contribute to diabetes, cardiovascular disease, inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract, arthritis, etc., etc. And then if we take a look at high blood pressure, which also contributes to heart attacks, aneurysms where the aorta is blown up like a balloon, heart failure, kidney failure as well, because of the impact it has on the kidneys, and contributes to strokes. You've got your systolic pressure in the arteries above, which is, sorry, a bit below, heart pumping from the heart, diastolic pressure while the heart rests. And so if you think about some examples, and there's a few really, of plant diet and a very natural diet with no salt. In the 1940s, I think it was a Professor Yudkin, I'm not sure about this, I think that was his name, did a long-term study with 200 individuals where he reduced their diet to simply rice and vegetables, and their high blood pressure went from in the 200s down to a normal blood pressure. The Yanomami tribe in Brazil have no salt, no processed foods. They don't go for meals out. Their older population has exactly the same blood pressure as their young, at an average of 100/60, which is a phenomenal blood pressure. There's no alcohol, in their culture. They eat a high fibre, plant-based diet. They have a lot of exercise within the environment that they live in, and no obesity in the population at all. So what about table salt? Well, they do know from research that salt can impair artery function. So what happens after a salty meal is that there's significantly less blood flow to the tiny blood vessels in the skin, which actually, interesting, they found if they inject vitamin C after a salty meal, that will help to repair the arterial function. But unfortunately, sodium can impair arterial function, and it's partly due to the oxidative stress. So this is why a high intake of vitamin C and other antioxidants can be so supportive, because it stops the formation of those free radicals in your bloodstream. But what they found is that sodium particularly suppresses activity of a key antioxidant enzyme that you make in your own body called superoxide dismutase, which has the ability to detoxify 1 million free radicals per second. And good sources of that in foods are things like cabbage, dark leafy green leaves, and green peas, and also nutritional yeast. So we could all do with a bit of that. So after one salty meal, your blood pressure raises, your arteries begin to stiffen and lose their elasticity. And that is partly what makes it harder for your heart to pump blood. Also causes enlargement, that will be over time, over your left ventricular heart muscle. And they found that sugar and salt have a particular impact on your heart muscle. So it also decreases your kidneys, I've got some really good words today, glomerular filtration rate, and increases protein excretion from the kidneys. And so additionally, it causes your sympathetic nervous system to overreact to stressful situations and contributes to chronically high levels of your stress hormones. So your sodium triggers your stress hormones. So if you think about it, it has an effect on your heart, your kidneys, and your brain. And thousands of years ago, there was an ancient medical text by the Yellow Emperor, and it was his classic of internal medicine. And it stated, if too much salt is used in foods, the pulse hardens. So in Chinese medicine, the pulse is something that an acupuncturist or a shiatsu therapist will check before each time you have a treatment. And even then, thousands of years ago, they knew the impact of too much salt. So what about caffeine? Well, caffeine in studies is shown to increase tachycardia, your heart rate, and can cause palpitations. And they reckon that 5 cups of coffee a day puts people at risk of, almost ongoing tachycardia. And a single 250 milligram dose, which isn't a lot of anything when you think about it, it's about the equivalent of 2.5 cups of a 6-ounce cup of coffee, will increase the levels of your hormone adrenaline by over 200%. Now, if you think about what hormone does, the stress hormone adrenaline does in your body, it is preparing you for fight and flight. So every time we have a cup of coffee, we are ramping up the adrenaline in our body, which will contribute to increasing blood pressure, contributing to a regular heart rate, and can increase respiratory problems because of the contraction of the breathing passages that it contributes to. Now, if you think about it, manufacturers have been very clever because they've decaffeinated a lot of caffeinated beverages, but then in order not to waste that caffeine, they've invented energy drinks. And these have been highly marketed to children and adolescents. And what they've found is that just one energy drink narrows your blood vessels. And of course, that will restrict blood flow to your vital organs and increase the risk of stroke and heart attacks. But there's been a particular association, with young adolescents and young people when they've taken an energy drink and some kind of physical exertion has taken place. So there's been quite a lot of surprise heart attacks in the past in these instances with young sports people. But also, there's also been a high incidence of heart problems and heart deaths where young people have been out all night and been mixing energy drinks with alcohol because of the effects that has on cortisol, adrenaline, and also then the liver trying to process both the caffeine and the alcohol and the effects that that then has on the heart. You've perhaps seen some of the headlines about both of those. Smoking is responsible for increasing arterial plaque and blood clotting, and it's due to the damage that the nicotine does to the endothelium. Now, your arterial endothelium, which is basically just the cell layer in your blood vessels, is responsible for quite a few functions that maintain a healthy circulatory system. And one of them is resistance to thrombosis, resistance to blood clotting. So it produces, the endothelium itself produces substances that help to deter blood clotting. Also, the endothelium will help control blood vessel tone and also regrowth of your blood vessel tissue. And so, unfortunately, it's the nicotine and the damage that it does to the endothelium, corrupting the cells, that can contribute to blood clotting and arterial plaque, because it basically makes it less efficient. Then also sugar has an impact, because if you have been for, if you have any issues with blood sugar and have been for an HbA1c test, what the HbA1c test looks at is how glycated your blood cells are with sugar, because sugar can actually cause cross-linking of your blood cells, and it reduces their ability to carry oxygen. So if you can imagine, a high intake of sugar in diabetes will also, and eventually working towards diabetes, will also reduce your ability to have good oxygen uptake into the body. Also, they found that glucose in the blood affects arterial myocytes in your endothelium, in your blood vessel tissue. So the myocytes are the muscle layer in the blood vessel tissue, and it makes those tissues contract, which raises your blood pressure. So this is why blood sugar is critically linked to your blood pressure. And this is why, one of the ways of helping blood pressure is to get the sugar down, because that will help blood pressure levels as well. Sorry, somebody asked a question. Oh, right, okay, thank you. Somebody's got to go. So then, this cross-linking of your advanced glycation end products that form is the posh term. And what's happening is that the proteins and the sugar are cross-linking, and they also cross-link heavily in the skin and can cause wrinkling of the skin because of the glycated proteins. Because of course protein, like collagen and so on, is very important in the skin and very important in all of our inside mucosa skin, if you like, our inside skin called our mucosa. So these advanced glycation end products react with your tissue proteins inside the vessels, and they form substances that reduce the elasticity of the cells. Oops. So how can we help? Well, one thing is that your antioxidants prevent atherosclerosis, and that is thickening of the blood vessels. So your vitamin C helps you form the proteins, like I was just mentioning. Collagen is one of them, elastin is another, and they help make strong arteries. So what happens if vitamin C is deficient is that your arteries weaken because they don't have the ingredients to make strong endothelium or blood vessels. That means that bleeding into tissue spaces can occur. It also means that your fats will oxidize and your cholesterol levels increase in vitamin C deficiency. Now, in order to protect itself, now this is very interesting if you think about what we're told about atherosclerosis and cholesterol. What happens is that when we're deficient, particularly of vitamin C as an antioxidant, because vitamin C helps renew all the other antioxidants in the body, like your vitamin A, vitamin E, zinc, etc. To protect itself, what the body does is it increases its production of healing proteins, which then thicken your arteries. And that helps prevent bleeding into tissue spaces. But unfortunately, thickened arteries slow down your blood flow and may eventually also narrow and block. And that's research done by two doctors that were really hot on nutritional research, Drs. Rath and Linus Pauling as well, Dr. Linus Pauling. So antioxidants prevent your triglycerides, your fats in your bloodstream, and your cholesterol from oxidizing. This is why it's so helpful as well. So what about omega-3? Well, omega-3 is a natural blood thinner. And what it does is it reduces platelet stickiness. It stops your blood cells clumping together. So lots of lovely sources of omega-3, your oily fish, your nuts, your avocado, your green leafy vegetables, and your seeds as well. With your magnesium and other electrolytes, lovely sources for magnesium are things like nuts and seeds, seafood again, whole grains, green leafy vegetables in particular are really important for magnesium. Grains like millet can be very high in magnesium. And if you can imagine, your heart is simply muscle, and all of your muscles need magnesium to relax. And magnesium is 50 times as low in the soil as it was 50 years ago or even 70 years ago. And what that means is that it's not available there in the soil to increase its, to be taken up by all of our foods. So we have to go for the foods that are particularly high in it. And your heart uses 18 times more magnesium than any other muscle in the body. Potassium, additionally, is important for your heart function because it helps muscle strength, and it also helps all of the enzymes all of the enzyme function inside the cells. So the cells of your blood vessels, the cells of your heart, because potassium holds water in a particular way in your cells, which helps with their structure and all of the functions that take place inside the cells. So all 4 of your main electrolytes, that is your magnesium, your potassium, your sodium, and your calcium, all of those have a role to play in the heart rhythm. That is the electrical function of your heart. They are all electrolyte minerals. They have an electrical charge, and they all contribute to your heart rhythm functioning well. The ideal is, though, that rather than something like table salt, we need organic sodium from things like celery, carrots, also, a little from sea salt and rock salt, but much more important, really, that you get organic sodium from vegetables. Now, there's been a lot of research, and you might have heard of Bill Clinton going on to a vegan plant diet when he had heart problems. And this is a picture of a pair of coronary arteries, well, not a pair of coronary arteries, the same coronary artery, should I say, before and after it spent 32 months with its owner consuming a plant diet. Now, this is from Dr. Colbell Esselstyn's book, and he gives advice on a plant diet and suggests actually that we avoid all fats apart from a tablespoon of ground flaxseed every day. So he does not advise use of any kind of fat. Now, I find it really interesting myself, knowing what we know about vitamin C and the impact that it has on the arteries. If you consider how much more vitamin C would be consumed when someone is consuming a plant diet as opposed to a conventional sort of carnivorous mixed diet, then in a way it's not surprising in the improvement in the arteries. So there's less narrowing, less twisting, and the arteries return to its full size. So just a few ideas for reducing salt, sugar and fat consumption, because as Michael Giguere says, hypersweet and hypersalty foods can actually dampen the taste buds and make your natural foods taste like cardboard. So, often when people are giving these things up, they find it really, really hard, because food doesn't taste of anything. It used to taste of sugar and salt and fat, and now it doesn't taste of anything very much at all, because those flavors are so strong. So the suggestions are: don't add salt at the table, and do stop adding it to cooking, but instead use the following vegetables, spices and herbs for flavoring food, and also citrus fruits are lovely. So, for example, one thing you can do if you steam some cauliflower and broccoli is to just pour the juice of half a lemon over them. Really delicious. You could wilt spinach with garlic. If you simply roast cherry tomatoes in the oven with a little bit of water added, and maybe some basil amongst them, and then top that onto your green veg, again gives a lovely piquant hit, really lovely. Any of the herbs and spices are delicious and just give your food the flavour that you might be missing. Avoiding processed foods and takeaways if possible, and if you're eating out, see if you can go for somewhere where you know that they support locally sourced veggies and so on, and that they prepare food themselves. On November the 1st at 6, it's Monday the 1st, I'm doing a little cholesterol workshop, and you may be thinking, well, Susie hasn't really mentioned cholesterol very much. Why is that in relation to heart disease? And it's because really cholesterol is not the bad guy it's thought to be, but there, you know, ideally your LDL cholesterol should not be too high, and I'm going to explain in the workshop why that is. So it's £12.50, you get a Zoom link emailed to you, and if that's of interest, please let me know. So thank you, and any questions, please let me know.
What about rock salt, the pink salt? That's not.
Yes, yeah, along with sea salt. So sea salt has about 40 minerals along with sodium, and rock salt has nearer 80 minerals along with sodium. So yes, not a bad thing to include a shot of if you want a little bit of salt.
Yeah. Who's here?
Tomatoes, when you said you roast them with a bit of water, what did you say you added to them, Susie?
Basil is lovely with tomatoes. If you pop some fresh basil in, or some dried basil, or actually what's nicer, I think, is to add the fresh basil afterwards, rather than cooking, or do both. But some roasted cherry tomatoes are really lovely, and they're very high in lycopene, which again is another antioxidant that's good for the heart.
You know, when you were talking about the sugar, would you associate the honey, the stevia and everything else as a sugar?
Not particularly. I mean, honey is actually twice as sweet as sugar. And the ideal is if you can get used to food without that hit, because sugar in itself is highly inflammatory, and feeds yeasts and fungi in the body. There's all sorts of good reasons, to reduce or cut it out.
What about a little bit of honey?
What about it?
Sugar, sweet, of course, isn't it?
Yes, at least it is a natural substance, in the sense that there are also lots of other minerals in honey, as well as just the sweetness. So yes, I would probably suggest that, or a little bit of sorry?
I love honey. I absolutely
you love
it.
honey.
Well,
just reduce the amount. If you're going to have a bit on breakfast, put half a teaspoon instead of a teaspoon, or a teaspoon instead of a dessert spoon. I mean, my dad, he's 88. He ladles it on his breakfast every morning, but yeah, he doesn't.
It's more tricky this time. It's more tricky in the winter.
Sorry, Anne.
I think it's easier in the summer, but in the winter you really feel the food.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you sort of feel the impacts of a bad diet more in the winter, I think.
What could you get the collagen from, or do you think you could take some supplements, or could you get it natural from food, the collagen, to help with this?
Well, the ideal is something like, if you increase vitamin C, so you could have a grapefruit in the mornings. Grapefruit, lovely way.
Because there's lots of these supplements about, isn't there, for collagen?
There is a lot of collagen supplements, and I have people have told me that when they take them, I mean, I don't personally take any, but people have told me that they feel their nails become very strong, that they sometimes notice the benefits to skin, for example. I would think that if you're taking it and you need it inside, there will be a lot going on inside that you cannot see, which is perhaps why you see less outside. But yeah, vitamin C, really, I always feel it's important to give your body the ingredients it needs to make what it needs to make, if you can.
Yeah, naturally, rather than taking a supplement what might have other things added.
Yeah, that you know, because otherwise we can end up taking a raft of supplements, and vitamin C is available in so many of your lovely fresh foods.
Yeah,
you know, your peppers, your lemons, your citrus generally, your berries, your even potatoes have a decent amount of vitamin C, and certainly things like your sweet potatoes will have all of the antioxidants in because of the colour. Anything colourful will be rich in vitamin C, and your green leafy veg is a nice source. You know, there's just the tomatoes. Yeah.
Would it be good to have a good to have a lot of vegetable soup in the winter then?
Yes. Yeah, that would be great. It's always a good idea if you are having just a veggie soup, is to try and get some protein in there as well, because it will help your blood sugar stay steadier for longer. So if you add, if you're someone that perhaps takes a chicken stock off a carcass, if you do that, you can use that in the soup as a base. You can add beans to your soup.
Yeah, that's easier.
Top them with a little bit of hummus stirred in as though it's a cream, which is nice, I think. Yeah. It's a lovely sort of
yeah,
to a fairly quiet vegetable soup, just a bit of homemade hummus, because I always put sun-dried tomatoes in mine. And I don't do what Dr. Esselstyn says and avoid fats completely. So, but a lot of hummus recipes have sort of 3 tablespoonfuls of hummus, 3 tablespoonfuls of tahini in them. And I only put a tablespoon of each in mine because that's quite ample fat hit for your hummus. And then bump it up with something like sun-dried tomatoes, which again adds lycopene, adds more flavour. It means I can reduce the garlic, because my family object how much garlic I put in my hummus. Get away with 1 clove then.
Oh, is it a pink or red grapefruit the best, Susie?
The pink and the red, yes, because of the colour, they will be higher in antioxidants than the white.
Right. Do you know, I like fruit, but I don't like grapefruits. It's that bitterness. I don't like things bitter.
Ah, right. Well, one thing you could do is put maybe 1/4 teaspoon of honey on one.
Wouldn't an orange be better? Would an orange be as good? Just an orange.
Oranges aren't as high, but yes, you could eat an orange. Yeah.
The pink grapefruit is better, you say, Susie?
Pink grapefruits and red grapefruits, because of the colours you've got there, will be higher in other antioxidants as well, like your vitamin A also.
Yeah, I like the red.
Yes, the red and the pink are lovely. They're that bit sweeter. The pink in particular, actually, Kim, are the sweeter ones.
Yeah.
Oh, are they? Oh, right.
They're sweeter than the white and the red.
Oh, right.
Marginally.
Roasting the cherry tomatoes, we should use the coconut oil, should we?
With the cherry tomatoes, you could just roast them, rinse them in, clean them in water, and then pop them still wet in the dish and just roast them like that.
Just honey oil. All right, okay.
Because they only need roasting for about 10 minutes at Mark 6, and they're done because they're so tiny.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's my one thing I'm going to do this week. I've had a bit of do, so I'm a bit, oh, but I have made vegetable soup with broad beans in it, so
nice.
that's keeping me going.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. Yes, but I mean, actually thinking about it, and I know they're not, I mean, broad beans, peas, and sweet corn have a surprising amount of protein in them. They're sort of 4 to 5% protein. So they will bump up a dish with protein.
Tin sweet corn, the tinned, in a tin.
Well, sweet corn, however it comes, yeah.
Right.
Ideally packed in water if it's canned, but yeah. I mean, autumn was a time when you can often buy the lovely whole kernels and sorry, have I got them? Yeah, kernels, and roast those in the oven or boil them and chomp your way around them, preferably without dipping them in butter first. Sorry.
The trouble. Yeah. Can you recommend a nice tahini? Because I just can't get along with it, me. I can't get along with taste somehow. Can you?
Right.
You put a recipe on for the pumpkins, but there's a lot of tahini in it, and I just don't like it.
Yes, there is a lot of tahini in that recipe. Watered down, fortunately. What I would suggest to you is that you try that dressing. Do a small quantity and try it, because it's got, if you've got some tahini left, that is, because it's got other, it's got other flavourings in it, which, and then you've got the harissa on the pumpkin, which really alters the flavour.
Can you suggest any what's not as bitter? What's the tahini? What's a bit nicer than others? Any decent ones?
Tahini.
Well, the Sanita tahini, the light one, is probably less bitter, I think.
It's a light one. And now, what makes that? Did you say? How do you spell that?
Thank you, Rona. Did you get the pumpkin recipe, by the way? Maybe not.
Yeah, it looks nice. It's just, I thought, well, is there anything you can put in? So what made the light one? What make would you say that was? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm leaving now.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Anne. Sunita, Sunita.
Well, I will if I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
other questions?
Hi, Susie. Just going back to the salt. I know we'd had an exchange earlier on this week about salt, and my dad wanting to give up salt. And he's smoked for years, and it's a long time since he gave up, but he described his taste buds as being knackered. But he automatically reaches for the salt. And he says he doesn't enjoy a meal if it hasn't got salt on it. So we've had a bit of backwards and forwards with him about stopping the salt altogether. He tried it for a couple of meals, said he didn't like it, he didn't enjoy it. He's nearly 80. He said he wants to enjoy his food, but what he is going to do is he's going to get some rock salt and just use a tiny amount, so he's got that flavour. I said it might be psychological. If you put a little bit on, you might think you're getting the salt that you need for it. So, but he says he's reached 80 and nearly 80, and he wants to carry on enjoying his food. But thank you very much for the info. We'll see how he gets that.
Yeah, I think if it's a pinch of rock salt, it's going to be very different than a handful of table salt. Very different. Yeah, at least he's going to get some other minerals along there with it. And the other thing is, Jo, that what they know is that if people eat a lot of vegetables, which I think you said your dad does.
Yes,
because did you say he grows some of his own?
No, he used to do.
He used to do.
He does eat a lot of veg.
That the high potassium in the veg helps displace some of the sodium.
Yes.
So that's an important factor in itself.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about reducing salt that helps blood pressure, they've found.
Yeah. Fingers crossed with all he's doing more walking, he's stopped the caffeine, he uses lots of garlic. So yes, he's making good progress. But
that's lovely.
The salt thing was the thing that was bothering him most.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no more questions.
Yeah.
Very interesting, Susie. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really
Very
interesting. Thanks, Susie.
Thank you.
We have an inspiring week of cooking lots of vegetables now. I've got a soup on the go, a vegetable soup, so that's good.
Lovely. Yeah,
Can you-
that's smashing. Thank you very much. And enjoy the full moon.
Yeah,
Right.
see what it brings. It's a bit of a volatile one, I think.
Yes, that's what I've been hearing. Yeah.
Moon in Aries. Anyway.
How long will the effects last, Susie?
Of what, sorry?
Of the moon, of this volatile moon.
Oh, well, physically, it tends to be 3 days before and after when people can feel it the most.
Right.
And that depends on what astrological sign it's in. So unfortunately, today's is in Aries, which rules the head. And there's been a number of headaches that I've heard about as it went into, Pisces over the weekend and then coming up to, Aries on Monday. Anybody heard any of that themselves or?
Yeah, me.
Mike
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
I had a headache, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Mike did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then head colds are another classic, and there've been a lot again coming up to around this full moon. But from a astrological point of view, I gather the effects are going to be quite dramatic because there's a few squares or something with Pluto and Mars, or
yes, it's looking a bit volatile, I think is the word. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yes.
So what can we do? Well, like you said, I suppose it's a nourishment that we eat into it that will stop us from getting I'm over the headaches, but I don't want anything else happening. I don't know if there's anything.
Well, one way to look at it is that if you nourish the body and you increase the amount of hydration, which increases the freedom of movement in the body, and of course some foods are very drying, some are very hydrating. If you increase freedom of movement in the body, you give it the capacity to go through the full moons and the new moons quite smoothly without too much stress and an upset, if you like. But it's thinking about, it isn't just our diet that is a factor. For example, most of the heart attacks I've seen in family members over the years are always associated with huge stress. And it's exactly the same impact for any type of illness. So, it may be that we've created more freedom of movement, but then if you think about being in a situation where there's more stress, of whatever, usually emotional stress is the worst kind, the impact that has on the body is enormously dehydrating, and has far-reaching effects because of the adrenaline and cortisol. Does that help, Jeff?
Yeah. Slightly. You see, I'm working 12 hours a day now, but sometimes 3 days, sometimes 4. And sometimes I'm enjoying the days, and sometimes I'm not. So maybe I feel a bit of stress in going to work.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Now that I finished yesterday, and I don't go back till Sunday, my body is relaxed.
Yes, unwinding.
Yeah, it's unwinding. So I got like just short of 8 hours sleep last night, which helps.
Yeah.
Because when I'm working 12 hours, I start at 6. I've got to set off to work at 4:45, and then I'm finishing at 6 o'clock. Getting home about 7. I'm having maybe a salad, a bowl full of salad, then going to bed for 8:30.
Right.
So it's and I'm just thinking, was it probably the stress of work, why I got the headaches? Because I normally don't get headaches. I drink a lot of water at work, and I've always done that. Drink water.
Well, it will. It's one of those things where, like they say on Notting Hill, or what does he say? A lot of contributory factors. So yes, I'm sure that will have been one of them. But then you've got this moon in Aries. Was it yesterday or the day before?
Day before.
Day before, on the day when it went into Aries. Yes, that's when a lot of people had the headache.
Yeah.
And the winter moons are more effective, if you like, because it's darker and it's colder and it's tougher for the body. So it's perhaps thinking, well, is there something you can do on your days off, like, listen to a meditation or a relaxation tape or something that would just help to bring everything down a bit after your shift?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And in the morning, it's that thing of jumping out of bed and saying, it's 4:45 and I'm going to have a great day.
Yeah.
Bless you. That is such an early start. On a dark morning. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
But what we say to ourselves is one of the most important things.
Yes.
About it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Thank
Well,
you.
I'm glad you only have to do 3 or 4 days, Jeff, and not 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Goodness me. Everybody all right?
Yeah. Yes, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susie. Thank you.
Look after yous.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
See you all again in
Thank you.
November.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.